Dale Little here with Rescue America Ministries, and seeing the Fortified Church Chesnadilla there in Chesnadilla, Romania. Talk a little bit more about this. We're right here in this middle of this coronavirus, and I think I'm about over it. Kind of went from there to bronchitis, and so I think I'm about clear now. Hopefully so. Anyway, I've kind of been up and down. But at any rate, I just want to go over a few things here. The whole concept, we've been talking about Q, been talking about sovereign citizens. It's hard to tell exactly where one stops and the other one begins. You've got Q, it's a little mysterious, but a lot of people think it's Trump, some thought it's the NSA. It's different things, and but you got all these splinter groups that kind of come down under it, and I haven't seen one yet that was good. President Trump said, talking about the coronavirus, that and the economy, he said you can't make the cure worse than the disease. Well, I believe in the deep state. Anybody that looks knows it's real. Yes, we need to do something with that, and President Trump is trying to. However, we look back at what the president said, it applies here also. We don't want the cure to be worse than the disease, and what I'm seeing is that it very well could be if would be this group and some of these groups involved. Let me remind you that Timothy McVeigh and his friend Terry Nichols that helped him with the bombing years ago in Oklahoma, I think it's in Oklahoma City, killed many innocent people, children, babies, and they were sovereign citizens. And basically what they believe is that, and this is what the whole thing, this movement, some of you are mixed up in, and I just say it now, I've hesitated to say that so far. But if you're a child of God especially, you need to get out of that stuff. It's based on the idea, and that's what Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols both believed, that in 1871 there was an exchange made that basically our country was sold out and it was made into a corporation. Well, they tell you right where to go look for it. But how many of you have ever done that? Probably very few. I decided I was going to. I wasn't wanting to get into this. I really don't have time. I have now a little more since I've been quarantined and kind of shut in. So we're just as strict over here right now as maybe more so than what they are in the United States. We've gone on a 30-day lockdown and getting ready to go. They're talking about putting another 30 a day on top of that. So we'll see. But anyway, I guess I do have a little more time down now, and I've been doing it. I've been going through the book of Daniel. I was wanting to get that finished up, but I think this is more important right now. But to talk about this act in Congress, as I said, I've gone there. They tell you right where to go. And if you haven't, let me try to. They talk about that the United States was incorporated. Well, if somebody with a third grade education read this, they might have maybe assumed that. But as I said, I don't know where. Let's see where I'm at here. Not sure what you can make out. But there's the document. And if you can't see what it says, it incorporates Washington, D.C., and the area within the District of Columbia into one municipality. And it plainly says for municipal purposes only. You're included within the limits of the District of Columbia be and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is hereby constituted, a body corporate for municipal purposes. And it goes on and says, and may contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued, plead, be and pleaded, have a seal, and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States and provisions of this act. Now, I know they make a big deal about that being just saying the United States and the United States of America. There's only one United States, and so they can keep talking about that corporation. They have nothing to show. Right there is what they're talking about. That's the only thing that talks about corporation that I've been able to find in this whole document. And they will not come out and show you the proof. They keep telling you, well, you hadn't read far enough for this, that, and the other. Go read some more. And if they have proof, put it out there. Don't keep talking this nonsense. And then they talk this. They play, as I said before, they play the mind games, and just like Satan did in the Garden of Eden. Well, has God really said this? And they start to cast doubt on stuff, and people begin to, well, maybe I hadn't thought about that. And they begin to look at this stuff they're presenting, and they say, well, maybe they're right there. It's so much. But right there is what everything hinges on. Anything else, you might as well that's enough right there to do away with the whole thing. But you can still go through and find a lot of stuff, a lot of accusations they make. One is about the prison systems. Now they make this claim that they've been privatizing the prisons in the country. Well, they were for a while. I don't know. I haven't kept up with it. I know they tried that in North Carolina, but they began to back off on it and begin to bring them back under the state because it just wasn't working that good. But use your head. They make this ridiculous claim that judges have, and they may have this part, I don't know, but they have investment in these prisons. They offer no proof of that. Again, they can say anything they want to say. But the premise is that, well, if the prison population goes down too much, they just have to go lock some more people up. Well, I want to tell you, there's plenty of criminals out there that need to be locked up. They don't have to go hunt any. They don't have to make up, and just jail somebody and grab somebody off the street and charge them with something just so they can make money through their prisons. That's nonsense. And then they talk about, and they use this catchphrase, justice or just us. Well, anybody can make up some little catchphrase like that. Still, that means nothing. And then they're talking about the inmates, and I heard this a little bit. I make this clear. I worked for about 20 years. I say I worked. I volunteered for about 20 years in the prison systems, off and on. Ministering to prisons, I sponsored prisoners out to take them out for the weekend. I ministered to them with the scriptures, teaching Bible studies. I worked for a couple of organizations. I started my own ministry, which was predominantly prison ministry. And then I worked for the prison system for 11 years. I know a little bit about what's there. And before I left the prison system after 11 years, I began to hear some of these inmates talking about they'd be worked as slaves because they were having to clean, having to work a couple hours a day or so for a little bit of money. And they were slaves. Listen, you fall for that. Who's paying for their upkeep? The taxpayer. If anybody's a slave, if you have to go out and work and pay for their upkeep, then you're the slave, not them. Think about this stuff. Use your head. And like I said, this constitutional thing, I said if a third grader read that, they might have originally come up with that idea that the United States was a constitution from that. nonsense. All it does is make a Washington, D.C. a municipality, an incorporated municipality, just like any other city in the United States. And I apologize if I've offended any third graders, but that's about how much education you'd have to make it read something like that. Now, people a little bit smarter have taken it and ran with it, though, and they've made their own plan at it. And this sovereign state junk, basically what they say is that they're free people. They're not responsible to obey the laws of anybody, basically. They're anarchists when you get right down to it. That's what a lot of them are promoting. They're not responsible to anybody. The Bible talks about those that reject authority, that we're to be subject to the higher authorities, and it's a rebellion. That's what it is. They don't want to pay taxes, but they want to drive down the highway, and then when a policeman stops them, they'll refuse. They say, "I don't need a driver's license. I'm not a citizen of this country. I don't need this, that, and the other. I can drive on." They try to use this either words that mean different things to them, and then they say, "Well, I'm not subject to that. I don't have to comply." And what they used to do, and I think maybe the laws have changed enough now to protect the law enforcement agents, but even when I was in prison, I had to deal with a couple of them. People claimed that, and I said, "Yeah, you don't want to come under the Constitution, but then you want to use it for its protections. For you, then you want it then." But the other time you don't want it when you want to do as you please. I said, now you're in prison, yeah, you want your constitutional rights. Where you see, it's too, you can't have it both ways, but they do try to. And what they used to do is through some kind of legal civil action. Not sure exactly how it worked, but in some states they were able to file a civil suit against an officer if they arrested them. And they could tie their house and everything they owned up in litigation. And they were just crippled and unable to do anything with it. And I think maybe some of the laws have changed since to prevent that. But still, that's what you're messing with. I've looked into it. I've studied it, and I said the more I study it, it's like cracking a nut that's rotten inside. It's kind of a nut, hard nut to crack. Let's put it that way. At first, or so I thought. But once you got that little crack, the stench led you right on into the rest of it. And the deeper I go into it, the nastier this stuff looks. But the idea, like I say, they can keep saying all this other stuff, and it all goes back to the idea of the corporation thing. Okay, that's been debunked. You just saw it there. Why look at it anymore? Why believe anything else they have to say? That's what I don't understand. And then you got people like Timothy McVeigh and Nichols. It's, I think 35 police officers have been killed by these sovereign citizens types. I'm just looking through. I had some notes here that I hadn't really even looked at, but if anything I want to touch on. Some of you are involved. Some of the churches have gotten involved in this. They've fallen for it. It's even being taught in some Sunday school class. Some pastors are being drawn into it. Maybe not entirely, but dabbling around with it. And I'll be honest, when I first started looking at it, there's parts of it. I said, well, it sounded, feasible. And like I say, I believe in the deep state. I believe it's an evil thing. And that, I hope that, and pray to God that something is done with. But something else. People set dates for when the end of the world was coming. They've done that for a long time. And then when it don't come and that happens, well, we miscalculated, or they, for this or that other reason. So they'll set. Well, I was mistaken. It'll come, next year or a few weeks from now, whatever. With all these mass arrests that's supposed to be taking place, when were they first supposed to be happening? How long have you been hearing that was going to happen? Has it happened yet? Now, there's always some excuse. And this coronavirus, though, this is perfect, though. And it was supposed to be done under cover of it. Well, there's still some time. There may be some arrests that take place. The world's not going to stop. Government's not going to stop. Court cases are not going to stop during this time. And so there'll be some arrests made. But you can't point to that and say, oh, wait, here it is. It's what we talked about. No, it's not. We're talking about making mass arrests all around the world. How in the world would that happen? They're going to invade all these different countries. All these other countries got these world leaders that are so righteous that they're going to allow President Trump to come in there or our troops to arrest these people. Have you thought about that? It's nonsense. It never happened. There might be one or two countries that let you do that and cooperate with you, but most part not. It's not going to happen. And I've been hearing about that probably for 15 or 20 years under different groups. One scenario had it was some people from outer space, aliens, that put us here. It was a kind of a trial thing to see how we did. And but they've been watching, and so they've seen how corrupt things have gotten. So they were coming back. It's almost kind of like that Heaven's Gate, maybe not quite as bad. There hadn't been mass suicides in it. I don't know. And some of this stuff just gets rehashed and rehashed as the next generation comes on. It's thrown out there again, and they gulp it up just, I don't know, something terrible. Christians ought to be more discerning, but it's the flesh. I want to be known for understanding this. I've got this bit of power. And you talk about elitism and being elite, then you become elite yourself. You think, well, I know all this that other people don't know. I know more than they do. These other people are just asleep. They don't understand what's going on or anything. And they're peeps, they're this, that, and the other. And we're the ones that's in the know. Look up the word esoteric. I've mentioned that before. And get a grasp of it, Gnosticism. But I tell you what, if this stuff's been taught in our churches, especially around the Unifor area where I'm from, shameful. This is what you're teaching. This is what's being taught, if it is. And like I say, it's impossible to separate some of this stuff, where it stops, where Q stops and it begins, or whatever. And if this Q movement's worth anything, then they ought to disown, these groups like this. I haven't seen that happen. Now, they also talk about the anomalies. I haven't checked into that a whole lot. But I want to tell you, the choice is not one or the other. I don't want to get off on this. I've dealt with it before because it opens up another can of worms. It's like Calvinism and what is it? Even think the term right now. Animism or not animism. I knew I couldn't come up with it exactly. You got amillennialist, and you got this other guy that's named similar to that. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't mean to bring this into it, or I'd looked it up. But you look up those two, you don't have to make a choice of one or the other. There's the Bible, there's the gospel, there's the truth. And that's the same situation here. You don't have to be an anomaly. You don't have to be accused. You don't have to take sides on that. I want you to just follow Jesus Christ and let these other people go their way. Let them do what they're going to do and forget about this nonsense. Yes, I hope something's done about the deep state, but this is like I say, if we aren't careful, we're going to take a cure that is worse than the disease. And from what I've seen, this could be. Let's just go on for God. Let God look to Him for kind of sort this stuff out. And we've got people in place in the government now that hopefully can take this stuff down. A lot of this stuff, if you found out about it, if you learn the truth about it, what are you going to do with it? I say it's kind of like a dog chasing a car. If he catches it, what's he going to do with it? And that's the way some of this stuff is. If you figure out some of this stuff, what you going to do with it? You're wasting your time, a lot of you. And right now at this time, you need to be in the Word. And you need to be trying to figure out, well, not trying to figure out, just ask God. What are you trying to do in the middle of all this, with this virus? Is there something I'm not seeing? Are you trying to speak to us in some way? But you can't even take time to really commit to that because you're too busy with this other stuff trying to figure it out. Let the world figure all that stuff out. Let's go on for God. Don't forget where I started with this. Timothy McVeigh, Terry Nichols were sovereign citizens, and that is what a lot of these Q groups are based on. They're sovereign citizens. Posse Comitatus. Look it up. Now, you can look up that, they tell you right where to find it. I'm going to close out here. Here's another thing I've noticed in some of the videos I've seen promoting Q. As the Posse reached its peak in the early 1980s, well, it had at that point, I think it might be reaching it now. When a farm crisis in the Midwest allowed Posse leaders to recruit among angry and desperate farmers, but this time Posse ideology developed into an elaborate theory involving an original utopian form of government based upon common law that had been subverted and replaced with an illegitimate tyrannical government. Well, now the story's a little different. See, like I say, they always adapt. They're always changing, but it's the same story that's regurgitated over and over. Now the utopian image is, and maybe that's part of that. I don't know. Like I say, I don't have time to watch all the stuff they put out, but now Donald Trump's supposed to lead us back into this utopian time of utopia. There is one that's going to do that, and that's Jesus Christ when He comes back to set up His millennial kingdom. Now, there may be periods of revival, and there again, it won't be led by Donald Trump. It will be the Holy Spirit. And there may be periods of revival in this world still left in it. I don't know, but I don't see it happening, but I don't know the future. Like some of you QAnons think you know. Even though God says that, no man knows what tomorrow might bring. But I do know what the Bible said, and that is that before the coming of Christ, that things will be as in the days of Noah. And those were terrible times. So this nonsense about Donald Trump ushering in a utopia, shame on you, it's heresy. Jesus Christ will come and set up His kingdom. It won't be you and I, and it won't be Donald Trump, much as you want it to be. If you just study some of this stuff and look it up, it's easy. You go on, matter of fact, it's sad though that you go on Google now, where Google used to be, everything on it was leftist and you couldn't find the truth because it had it buried so deep. And now you go on Google something like this article of 1871, and that's all you find. It's hard to find an accurate article, but I didn't depend on any of that. Like I say, I went to the article itself. And like I say, they tell you exactly where to go. It's Acts, and if you want to write it down, I know you probably don't have a pencil with you right now. Acts of the 41st Congress, Section 34, Session 3, Chapter 61 and 62. See if I can get here where you can actually see it. Down at the bottom there. Look it up. Read it for yourself. See, they think you're not going to do that. They don't mind inviting you to go look it up because they think you're not going to. It may be too difficult to find. But look it up. That's what I did. You'll see some of this stuff. Dale Little, Rescue America Ministries.